Welcome back to the Tao of Wellbeing. Today I want to talk about using the voice for self-healing. Now there's lots and lots of different ways you can do this. One of the more obvious ones is simply by singing. It seems pretty obvious to me that singing is good for you because it makes you feel good. It's kind of, you're using your body. You tend to have better posture than you normally would. You wouldn't be slumped because you've got singing. Oxygenating your blood, it's kind of an energetic activity. All sorts of reasons why singing is good for you. Also, it can be a community activity, so you're connecting with other people. All sorts of reasons. But what I want to talk about specifically here is not so much singing, which is more kind of externally focused, as using the voice as a tool for kind of self-healing in a kind of inward direction. And there's various traditions that do this. And I want to talk about my experience with some of them and just a few kind of comments about the process. So got a few notes here. I'll just go through them in whatever order that makes sense. So the first one, 6 healing sounds. This is from a Taoist tradition, I think a Chinese tradition. I think it comes from Mantak Chia originally. And I can't actually remember what the sounds are, but you have some sounds that go with the organs and you vibrate, you make those sounds in order to kind of tune into and to vibrate specific organs. So there'll be a sound for the liver, which I think might be choo, choo, and ha for the heart, I think. I can't remember the details. This is just an overview of some of the ones that I've kind of been exposed to rather than a kind of lesson on any of this stuff. So six healing sounds, quite an interesting one to look into. But then the main one for me is what I've learned from Bruce Frantzis. Bruce Frantzis is a Taoist master, studied many years in China, martial arts, but also meditation traditions in Taoism. And he uses sound a lot. He's got these liturgies that he calls the Songs of the Tao, and they have various functions. So you can just listen to them while you're practicing, and they may support your body alignments, or they may support working with certain emotions such as fear or anger, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of on the passive side, just sitting quietly, listening to that, using it to tune in. But there's also making sound, right? Now, there's a whole kind of technology here, and I've done a little bit of it with him. He doesn't often teach it. Partly because the liturgies, if you want to kind of do the full program, the liturgies are in an ancient dialect of some Chinese language. So not much hope of getting the sounds right. But he says that's not so important. Just make any sound, really. And we use this as a tool for, first of all, for feeling what's going on in our body. And then once we've found something that is not as it should be, we can then use that vibration and our intent to kind of loosen it up, free it up. And that can be very physical, like there may be some kind of obstruction in your body, some kind of tension, like you might have a really tense jaw or something, and you make a sound like and you use your intention to release that area. It can be on a very physical level, or it can be more and more subtle. So it can be what he would describe as energetic blockages or emotional blockages. So you may notice that you've got some emotion going on in your chest, for example, and then you'd use some sound to kind of tune into that. You just is a fine noise, or or whatever noise you want. We used dun in one workshop, which is just one syllable from his liturgies. But the point is, it's not that important what sound you make. And I'll talk about that a bit more in other contexts in a moment. But so you've got some like emotional whatever going on. Very softly, almost kind of caressing yourself, or not caressing, but holding, nurturing, soothing. And you might well find that just that kind of compassionate intention, that the voice is like a carrier wave for. So this is an interesting concept. The voice can be a carrier wave for energy, right? So we kind of use it as a carrier wave to direct compassion towards ourselves and towards our pain, our emotional blockages or whatever, yeah? Okay, and then there's more specific stuff, like you might work with what he describes like the energy channels and the energy centers, like the dantians. So you got your upper dantian, middle dantian, lower dantian in the Taoist system. And then this brings me on to the what they call chakra toning or chakra chanting, where they have, in the Indian system, they have 7 chakras. And there's various traditions where you have different sounds. I think the first one I learned was like, oh, for the root chakra, and then ooh for the next one up. But the thing about this is, depending on who you ask, you get a completely different correspondence of sounds to chakras. And I've looked into this, and I've asked various people who have also looked into it, and they've said there is apparently no canonical source for this. So it's not like, this is the correct syllable for this part of the body. It's just an entry point. It's like if you've got a system and you've got a set of sounds that you like, then go for it. And you learnt it from someone that you like, and you just use those. But don't believe that they're like the only ones that can work, because depending on who you ask, the sound for the third eye might be E, or it might be oo, or it might be A. It just doesn't matter really. But the point is, you have a form, and that form is an entry point. And then, working with the chakras, it's an interesting one, because I predict that most people who are working with chakras, it's more like a kind of visualization exercise rather than kind of like, I can feel exactly that kind of energy center in my body. It certainly takes a lot of training to get to that point. But what it does do using these sounds is it's like, well, you're bringing attention to that region. So even if you can't feel a specific energetic wheel or whatever spinning, you're just bringing attention to that region. So you might be working on this area. You might have a sound E, and it just allows you to just rest your awareness there and become aware of what's going on. And then in doing so, you can release any kind of tension, or you can just kind of be present to whatever's occurring while you rest your mind in that part of your body. And that can have some very, very interesting effects. Now, a similar system is the Sacred Warrior Seed Syllables from Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche of the Bon tradition of Tibet. Now, in Tibet, they have a different chakra system. They have 5 chakras instead of 7. They have the crown chakra, which includes the actual crown and also the third eye. That's like one, like basically the brain. Then they have the throat, then they have the heart, then they have the belly, and then they have the root chakra, which is like the genital area. And this is a really interesting teaching. It's very deep, and Tenzin Rinpoche, he's an amazing teacher from like an ancient lineage, but very kind of what's the word, culturally kind of bilingual. He can translate the kind of culture into Western, the way Westerners can really get this stuff. He's brilliant. So the syllables for that are Om, Hum, Ram, and then Za with a pelvis. Om, Hum, Ram, Za. And there's kind of visualizations that go with it. So the R is like the clear blue sky, and then the Om is like the awareness, resting in pure awareness. And then when you get to the heart with the Hung, you have qualities. So you're looking for qualities to emerge, like love, compassion, equanimity, etc. And then at the belly you have the maturation. Okay, so it's kind of like the strengthening, the ripening of those qualities. And then at the pelvis, the secret chakra, you have manifestation. Pretty esoteric stuff, but it's rooted in this physical vibration. Hum, Ram, Za, and you can spend as long as you want on each one. Or you can just do the whole thing. Hum, Ram, Za, Hum, Ram, Za, Hum, Ram, Za, Hum, Ram, Za. So I'm not teaching this stuff. Go and check him out, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. But just that's one that I'm excited about. And I do a fair amount of, not as much as I'd like, but I might change that and do some more. What else have I got here? Mantras. Now, mantras, they're often associated with certain deities in Tibetan Buddhism, or certain archetypes. And there's often a practice that goes with them that's beyond the actual sound itself. But having said that, just the sound itself is often, it's a great thing to do, and it can just be a way of kind of tuning into that particular energy. So Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum is the mantra of Chen Rizig, who's like a kind of Tibetan Jesus kind of character, this kind of compassionate, all compassionate being, and that's his mantra. And there's lots of practices that go with that, which I'm not going to get into here. But there's loads of mantras, and they're great just to do. Don't necessarily need the whole teaching. You can just enjoy the mantra, enjoy the vibration, use it as a way of centering yourself, kind of tuning into the energy that it represents. So if you want to tune into compassion, then that is a really good one. Om Mani Padme Hum. Loads of other mantras. I've done a video recently on Medicine Buddha and his mantra, which is like a kind of healing meditation visualization that has sound that goes with it. And mantra is a whole thing. I'll probably have a whole video on that at some point, but I just want to mention it. And then there's kind of odd ones. Like I was at a festival years ago, and there was a shaman doing a workshop, and he gave me this crazy mantra, sound healing thing. Ning nang nang nong, 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 ning nang nang. It sounds ridiculous, right? Actually, it's really good for your jaw and your face and your sinuses. Ning nang nang nong, ning nang nang nong, ning nang. It's a little bit hard to do fast because of the syllables. Ning nang nang nong, ning nang nang nong. It's also silly and it like raises your spirits because it's like it's ridiculous, you know. Ning nang nang nong. Check it out if you want. Another one someone mentioned years ago, ta-da! Literally just the sound ta-da. It's very hard to say ta-da with that kind of intonation without your energy automatically just lifting a bit, you know, as opposed to ta-da. If you say ta-da, your energy is going to be down, isn't it? If you say ta-da, ding, those kind of sounds. And I'm not getting in this video into like sound healing, which is like using external sound sources to kind of impact your being, because that's a whole topic in itself. But just in terms of sounds you can make yourself. So I think I've covered most of the ones that I know much about. There's one called Brahmari, I think, which is based on the humming of a bee. So this, yeah, I don't know much about it, but it's just making humming sounds. There's a lineage, there's a tradition behind it. Obviously, another one is Om, really well known Om, written about in that wonderful book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. You can do a whole kind of lifetime of spiritual development just with the sound Om, which represents the kind of what they call the unstruck sound, or the kind of silent sound that kind of underlies the fabric of creation, or what have you. It's got kind of esoteric meanings. But I would say with sound practices, because they're kind of a great way to get into the body in a very kind of felt physical way, it's probably great if the sound you're making doesn't have too much kind of intellectual cognitive content, you know, because you don't really want to be like analyzing meanings. It's the point of the sound is to bring you into your body, to find out what's stuck and what isn't, and then to use a vibration to start to unstuck it. Yeah. And that's great. It's a really fun thing to explore with. A couple of things I feel I should say. Bruce has said, slightly contradictorily, Bruce Francis, he said, do not under any circumstances vibrate above the head. Right. He's also said, he's given us practices where we have vibrated, but he's given us the warning, you don't do anything like vigorous in terms of vibrating your head. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because your brain's up there. It's a very delicate organ. So if you're going to make like really loud sounds, you're going to shake things up. So if you are working above your head, just be aware of the need for gentleness. Yeah. If you're going to make sounds, make gentle ones. I mean, the R from the Sacred Warrior seed syllables, he tends to do fairly loud. So he doesn't have that warning. But again, you know, just be sensible. Yeah. All these things, there's kind of like, you know, they come with a safety warning that's often implicit, but maybe needs to be made explicit. Like, you know, you're dealing with your body, you're dealing with like energy, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with potentially more spiritual aspects of reality. You know, there's potential pitfalls. You just need to be careful, be sensible. What else? So just in terms of practice, you know, it's great not to feel inhibited. So if you can find somewhere that's you feel you can make silly noises without, you know, worrying about what other people think, or don't worry about what other people think. That's the other way around that one. But you know, you don't want to like be distressing someone else. They might not be enjoying what for you is this wonderful healing practice. A neighbour might not find it wonderful and healing, and that's fair enough. So just have some sensitivity around it. Personally, I find doing it in the car. Not that I'm a great fan of the whole environmental impact of cars, but if I'm going somewhere, you know, pull up, sit somewhere nice, and make some noises. It's a great opportunity to do it. Or while I'm in transit, you know, doing various sound practices. So I think that's it. Just a general, like, you know, bringing awareness to some of these traditions and inviting you to research further. You know, you can do your own kind of experimentation, try stuff out, but it's also really good to learn from someone that's done a lot of this stuff and is, I wouldn't say ideally, but maybe associated with an ancient lineage, because there are like ancient technologies that are available to us that, you know, make use of sound for healing. When I say ideally or not ideally, I mean it's like there might also be some like new ones which are not necessarily kind of claiming to be part of an ancient lineage, although they might be kind of indirectly or even without knowing it. But you know, there might be some kind of new stuff that's worth checking out as well. So you know, the balance between tradition and innovation is always a kind of rich territory to explore. So I think that is pretty much it. Let me just check from my little list. can't actually read my writing, which isn't great. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say. So check it out, Using the Voice for Healing. Good luck. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video.